Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Tuesday, actually, to all of you out there. Thank you so much for tuning in to another jam-packed and fun episode of the Brew City Lounge. I am your host, Brandon. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. And please follow the show on all social media platforms at Brew City Pod. I'm very excited to have you guys tuning in. If you are on the live stream, good afternoon to you all. If you are listening on your smart device, wherever you may get your podcasts, keep in mind, Brew City Lounge is available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, all that good stuff. As always, it is an absolute honor and privilege to be here to talk about our favorite teams with you. Of course, I am talking about those Milwaukee Bucks and Milwaukee Brewers. Lots to talk about, lots to break down. An absolute monster Game 7 win for the Milwaukee Bucks against the Brooklyn Nets when it seemed everything was against us, including the officials, including the world. The Milwaukee Bucks do come out victorious. We will talk a little bit about that. Of course, get your reactions from a Game 7. If you are on the live stream, I do want your reactions from what that game meant to you, what you thought about that game. So please go ahead and drop your thoughts down in the comment section below. And then we're going to go ahead and look ahead to the matchup with the Atlanta Hawks in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Milwaukee Bucks do have home court advantage as the Atlanta Hawks are the 5th seed in this year's playoffs. So before we get all started with all that, like I do with every show, just wanted to give you guys another friendly reminder that the Brew City Lounge has its own official merchandise. The link is pinned at the top of the Facebook and Twitter profile pages. Go on over there, hit that link, shop for your Brew City Lounge favorite merchandise. I would appreciate it. You look good doing it. You look good wearing it. So go ahead and check it out. Also want to announce that the Brew City Lounge has officially partnered up with the folks over at Fanatics. Again, that link is also on the Facebook and Twitter page. Go ahead and click on that link, shop for your favorite teams. But let's talk right away about these Milwaukee Bucks and what a huge Game 7 win that was. I don't know about you guys. I know there was a lot of pessimism surrounding the Milwaukee Bucks winning in 7 games. Could they do it in Brooklyn? Could they withstand a Kevin Durant big game? And I believe they did do all of that. Obviously, they won the game. And it felt like to me, and maybe I'm being a little bit over the top, maybe a little bit over dramatic, it felt like a franchise-altering, one of those dramatic wins that just changes the franchise. And I want to talk about it surrounding what it means for Giannis winning that series, going into another hostile environment and winning a Game 7 when really nobody thought you were going to do it, including most of the fan base. So we're going to talk about that. But I do want to get your guys' thoughts on an absolute huge Game 7 win. The Milwaukee Bucks do win and beat the Brooklyn Nets in 7 games, 115-111. And it was just one of those games where it was just back and forth. And when Giannis airballed the 3, he wasn't sure how that was going to respond with him winning that game. And look, it's just a monstrous franchise win. And it felt like the night after the night that they beat the Brooklyn Nets, it felt like the Bucks had won a championship is what it felt like. It felt like the weight was lifted off your shoulders and the Bucks were going on to win a championship. And that's kind of what it felt like. People were celebrating and crying and so joyful in that moment. And as we should be, it's something to absolutely celebrate. Mike Budenholzer makes his second conference championship in 3 years with his second different team. Giannis is back in the Eastern Conference Finals. Look, a great chance to get to a championship. You guys heard Kevin Durant after the game, but I want to talk about what that Game 7 meant for this franchise. And look, it means nothing in theory. Like, look, you won in the second round. You beat the Brooklyn Nets. Who cares? And everybody will downplay it. Well, you beat the Nets without a fully healthy James Harden, which is funny because now he's playing in the Olympics, so probably wasn't hurt too much. And then you're going to talk about, well, they didn't have Kyrie Irving. Okay. Giannis didn't have any of those guys either. I mean, the Brooklyn Nets are still a damn good team with Kevin Durant. So whether or not Kevin Durant had a fully healthy squad, number one, that's that's not the Bucks' fault. Like, the Bucks can't control who is and who isn't playing when it comes to the opponent. So it is what it is. Number two, Kevin Durant is the best scorer in the NBA that we may have ever seen. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He is the guy. And what a phenomenal series he had. I tip my cap to him for just having an absolute monster series. The last 3 games, he averaged over 43 points. It was just a monster series from him, and a guy that literally could not be stopped, and he got pretty much anything he wanted. But the Bucks made him earn it, and shout out to PJ Tucker for playing that defense and sticking with the defensive game plan that they did. I said it after the Bucks won Game 3, and if you follow the show, if you're over on Twitter, you can follow the show at Brew City Pod. I said after the show, if this Bucks team wins Game 4, they're going to win this series. Now, I didn't know if it was going to go 7. But I said if they won Game 4, that the pressure would be flipped over to Brooklyn, and they would feel pressure that they may have not felt before. And they did, because they brought James Harden back when, after the Bucks had finished off Brooklyn, said he had a grade 2 hamstring strain that he came back to play. The Bucks were putting the pressure on Brooklyn by just winning Game 4, because what that did was tie the series at 2 games apiece. Brooklyn was up 2-0. And if you remember back to Game 3, it was a game in which I still think the Brooklyn Nets fans, players, coaches, front office are probably losing sleep over, because if you look back at that game, and the Bucks did win 86-83, it's probably one of the uglier games we've seen in the playoffs. The Brooklyn Nets had every opportunity to win that game. And had they won that game, the series is 3-0. And we're not talking about the Bucks winning in 7 games. Maybe the series goes 4 games, 5 games, maybe 5, maybe 6 at most. The Bucks are not coming back from 3-0 against the Brooklyn Nets with Kevin Durant. Game 3, when the Bucks won that game, and I went on the postgame show right here on Brew City Pod, and I said, if the Bucks win Game 4, they're going to win this series, because the pressure is back on Brooklyn. And they responded. Brooklyn responded very good. Game 5, they dominated the game. Bucks came back, were leading that whole game. Brooklyn dominated the middle of that third quarter and the fourth quarter, pretty much the only important part of the game. Brooklyn dominated that fourth quarter, and they ended up winning Game 5 in a game where the Milwaukee Bucks could have easily have won. But it goes to show you that I was right. They won Game 4. And I said if they won Game 4, they were going to win this series. Now, I didn't think going into Game 5 in Brooklyn that the Bucks were going to walk in there and absolutely just, not go up 17 and end up losing the series. But I thought that had they given up a little bit of a fight in Game 5 and maybe won that game, that they could easily have walked out with that series winning in 6 games. And they went back home and obviously won Game 6 and then back to Brooklyn and won Game 7, as we all know. Give Coach Bud credit where credit is due. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that don't want to give him credit, that want to, fire him because of the A, B, or C. And most Bucks fans have 100 different reasons why they want to fire him. He coached this team to a series win. He outcoached Steve Nash. He outcoached Eric Spoelstra in round 1 when they swept the Miami Heat. Look, had the Bucks lost this series, Coach Bud had every excuse to probably lose this series. Kevin Durant's never played better in his career. Game 5, he had the best game he's ever had in his MVP Hall of Fame career. And you could have chalked it up as, it was a game that he lost or a series that he lost, and most people expected it. But he didn't. He won the series in a series where everything was against Coach Bud. I mean, everything. Kevin Durant was getting everything he wanted. The officials were calling the most ridiculous stuff, as they always do. So your best player in Giannis was playing to his capability. Drew Holiday didn't show up much at all of the series. He had key moments. Game 3, obviously, he had the big layup to go ahead and take the lead in that game and eventually win Game 3. But you guys, your big 3 didn't play up to what they've been playing all year, and specifically Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, and we'll get to Chris Middleton in a minute. They all, Giannis and Chris Middleton absolutely showed up. So again, Milwaukee Bucks win in 7 games in a series that I think is going to change the outlook of this franchise. And I say that because I think they have a very good chance, maybe the best chance outside of maybe 2018, 2019, since obviously 71, since the last time they won a championship, to win a title. Now, the 2001 Bucks, they weren't going to beat the Lakers. They could have got there, but they weren't going to beat the Lakers. So this is the year I think we'll eventually look back, and I am predicting that the Bucks will win a championship. I do think they will beat the Atlanta Hawks, and we'll get to that later on in the show, and we'll also get to who they could possibly play if they do pass the Atlanta Hawks. And we also want to make sure that we respect the Atlanta Hawks because I think they're a really good team and a really well-coached team. So it's going to be interesting nonetheless, but I do think they get there. But I want to talk a little bit more about this series and what this means for the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, as a franchise, we saw, the very highs and the very lows of this franchise. Look, it could have won in 2018, 2019. It didn't happen. 2020, obviously COVID-19 struck and the NBA world was kind of put down on its butt. But I think this is the year. This is a good year for this team to grab a hold of what's in front of them. And you heard Kevin Durant after the game and after Game 7, and shout out to Kevin Durant for the professionalism he showed after the game and the humility he showed after the game. Said you have a great chance to win the championship. Go get it. And I think the Bucks do. And that's why I think winning that series against a team that was as good as Brooklyn. Look, Kevin Durant's the best player we've seen in the playoffs, maybe outside of Kawhi Leonard in 2018, 2019 against this specific Milwaukee team. I mean, the guy was averaging 43 points the last 3 games of the series. You couldn't be stopped. Mentally, I think this was a huge hurdle for Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Coach Bud, that they can go into somebody else's arena in a deciding game and put up good numbers. And we're going to talk about those numbers with Giannis. And I want your guys' thoughts on Giannis in elimination games because the numbers kind of speak for themselves. Look, Game 6, Giannis, the Bucks were down 3-2 at Game 6 at the Fifer Forum. Giannis goes out and has 30 points and 17 rebounds. That's about as good as you can get. I mean, you're dominating the scoring and you're dominating the boards. Game 7, obviously an elimination game. You're on the road. You're facing the best scorer maybe ever, and you go out and you get 40 points and 13 rebounds. I see a lot of things on Twitter. I see a lot of things on Facebook. I see a lot of things being discussed in a lot of different areas about all the things that Giannis can't do and what he's not able to do. Why does it take so long for him to shoot free throws? Why does he shoot 3-pointers? Why does he do this? Why does he do that? For a guy that gets criticized more than anybody in the NBA, somehow people forget he's the reigning MVP 2 years in a row. But to go out in back-to-back elimination games for Giannis and put up 30 and 17 and 40 and 13, when the world was expecting a loss, when a loss would have been, okay, it is what it is. You were supposed to lose to Brooklyn. Remember, Brooklyn was supposed to win. And this is before the series. This is before they went up 2-0 against Milwaukee. Getting Kevin Durant, having Kyrie Irving, you were supposed to be there. They were supposed to win. They're supposed to be playing deep into the playoffs. Going out and getting James Harden in the middle of the season. This was expected for Brooklyn to be there. There was no surprise. So again, we can sit here and we can, bash Giannis on the things that he doesn't do, or whatever you want. But the guy went out in 2 elimination games and absolutely showed out. And had key moments in that overtime game when Milwaukee couldn't get a bucket with 1:12 left in overtime, and he got him going. And then obviously Chris Middleton followed behind him with a clutch shot with 40 or so seconds left in that overtime, Game 7. What are your guys' thoughts on Giannis so far in these playoffs? Now, I know the headline says thoughts on Giannis in elimination games, but I think it goes for the whole playoffs. The guy's been phenomenal, and he doesn't get the credit I think he rightfully deserves. He's averaging 28.8 points in this playoffs. I mean, the guy's he's come to play, and he's playing at a very high level. And yes, he takes some ill-advised three-pointers that we wish he wouldn't take. And yes, he probably, takes a little bit too long to shoot free throws. I don't care. For a guy that I'm being told doesn't have a lot of skill and can't do this and can't do that, and he's averaging 30 and 17 and 40 and 13 in 2 games where he's facing to go home or win or go home, I'll take that every day of the week. Every single day of the week. And then we can talk about his counterpart in Chris Middleton, who completely shushed the haters. For a guy that gets criticized more than maybe Giannis because of the contract that he signed that was offered to him, keep in mind how clutch Chris Middleton was in these playoffs, specifically in Game 6 and Game 7, where it felt like every time Brooklyn was going to make a run, Chris Middleton responded with a big bucket. Or he was going shot for shot with Kevin Durant. Jake over on Twitter, he drops in a comment, only thing that will stop any slander is a championship outside of Milwaukee, at least. And I don't even know if that would do it, to be honest with you. And I think you're onto something. Shout out to him for hopping on Twitter. Look, yeah, it might. But then you'll hear, if Giannis does win a championship, Jake, you'll hear that, well, Kyrie Irving was out. Well, James Harden wasn't healthy. Kawhi Leonard's not healthy in the West. The Hawks lost DeAndre Hunter. You're going to hear everything no matter what. So I think, yes, in theory, you're right. And I think, having him win a championship does take a lot of the, quote unquote monkey off his back. Listen, and I said it before on the show, Giannis has won every award that you can possibly win. Literally every award that you could possibly win. All-Star MVP this year. Look, he's done it all. Most improved. I guess he didn't win Rookie of the Year, but most improved, MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, All-Star Game MVP. When he wins a ring, if it's this year, maybe whenever, look, there's nothing else the guy can win. He's done it all. I mean, we've seen LeBron James, who's done it himself and who continues to win, get criticized. So it's just something that I think Giannis is going to have for the rest of his life. As far, maybe not life, playing career. The people are going to hate Giannis because he didn't go to Miami. He didn't go to New York. He didn't go to LA. He was loyal to the city that drafted him and raised him and helped him. So yeah, you're probably somewhat right. I think a ring, the slander might stop if he wins a championship, but I don't think anything's going to stop the slander because it is Milwaukee. Now, if Giannis had left and won a ring in LA or New York or those big markets that we just named, then he probably doesn't get as much slander. But because he decided to stay, we heard the comments today from Stephen A. Smith and First Take guys, Damian Williams, or whatever his name is. They don't want to come to Milwaukee. It's a terrible city. So that's okay. We don't want him here. We don't want him here. Jake's over on Twitter. He says, and if Stephen A. Smith comes to Milwaukee, boo the S out of him. I don't even care. I don't it bothers me, but this is where we're used to this. This goes back to Giannis signing with Milwaukee and how upset the NBA world was that he didn't go somewhere else. We're used to this. This is what makes us great. It's us versus everybody because nobody wants us to succeed. The NBA doesn't want us to succeed. The way that some Milwaukee fans and NBA fans just don't like Chris Middleton for whatever reason. Chris Middleton in this series averaging 28 points, 8.6 rebounds, and 5 assists. By far, Giannis did great. I mean, Giannis averaged 28 and 8 in the series. Chris Middleton, you can make an argument that he was the best player in this series. Now, I know he doesn't do anything flashy. And I know he doesn't, have the highlight reels maybe that Giannis or Kevin Durant do. But it just felt like every single time that Chris Middleton was on the floor and the Brooklyn Nets went on a 7-0 run or a 10-0 run, 12-4 run. And these are exact runs that I remember in my head. I remember Chris Middleton coming back down and hitting a big shot, hitting a three-pointer, getting fouled and making a 4-point play, just responding in ways that we haven't seen consistently throughout his career. And I think this year, and that's why I think mentally beating this Brooklyn Nets team is just so big for yes, the franchise, yes, the city of Milwaukee, but professionally, personally, for Chris Middleton, Giannis, to show you guys belong. Look, you are an all-star, Chris Middleton. You are an all-star and MVP, Giannis. Like, you can do this, giving them that confidence to be like, I got this. Like, I can do this. This is where I belong. This is where, this is my stage. And you saw Chris Middleton committing to Team USA today. Great for him. Congratulations to him. This is the next step. The next step is the Eastern Conference Finals and winning and beating whoever they play. Now we know it's the Atlanta Hawks, and I want your guys' thoughts on that matchup with the Atlanta Hawks just here shortly. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But look, the Milwaukee Bucks defeat the Brooklyn Nets in 7 games. If I would have told you that last week, your response would have been what? Fill in the blank, because it absolutely doesn't surprise me. But I thought, although I was over on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. I thought that the Milwaukee Bucks were going to win. I said it because I'm a homer, because I always want to give that faith in my team and give them the benefit of the doubt. I didn't see a close game in Brooklyn and seeing the Bucks win it. And then seeing how regulation ended. Kevin Durant hitting that shot. We thought it was a 3-pointer. His toe obviously was on the line by just a few hairs. And then to go overtime. And when it went to overtime, my first thought was, you should have won it in regulation, because I don't see how you're going to win it in overtime in Brooklyn against a guy like Kevin Durant, where you're going to have to score. Like, we know what happens in overtime, and this series was draining physically and mentally for both teams, for all players. To see them go into overtime and then win it in overtime with Giannis with a big bucket, and then Chris Middleton with a big bucket, Brook Lopez with a little bit of a blunder, late, just a lot of things, very much of a roller coaster of a game, very, very highs and lows. Giannis airball in the free throw attempt. It's just, there was a lot of things going on. So for a franchise, it's so nice, because for a Wisconsin fan, I always feel like we're on the back end of these big games. Obviously, as Packer fans, Bucks fans, we've been there so many times. Brewers fans, so many times. And it's so encouraging to see. Shout out to my boy Xavier. He's over on Facebook. You can follow the show on Facebook at Brew City Pod. He says, he drops in a comment, it is going to be crazy tomorrow. Can't wait. If you guys missed the news, and Xavier, you're 100% right. If you guys missed the news, the Bucks tweeted out, or somebody related to the Milwaukee Bucks tweeted out, they're making room for 10,000 more fans down at the Deer District. They're anticipating 25,000 people to be down at the Deer District outside the arena. They're going to have more people outside the arena than inside. Xavier's right. It's going to be insane. I have not been down to a game, to watch a game down to the Deer District. For those that follow the show, for those that know me, know that I moved home. Last year was the first basketball year that I was in Milwaukee for. Obviously got shut down because of COVID when the nicer weather was coming around. So I have not been down to a Deer District for a game. I'm hoping to go down maybe Friday. During the work week is kind of a little bit difficult, but I'm going to try to attempt to go possibly Friday, especially if the Bucks win on Wednesday. I think Xavier's 100% right. It's going to be insane, and it's going to be fun. And like, this is what we've been waiting for as Bucks fans, as diehard Milwaukee fans. This is what we've been wanting. This is what we've been craving. We saw flashes of it at a young age with Giannis and Chris Middleton, and the two have grown into it to be our team. Remember, the same year that the Bucks drafted Giannis was the same year they acquired via trade Chris Middleton. So this has been 8 years in the making. The Deer District is because of those guys. Fifer Forum is because of those guys, and it's because of us as fans sticking with this team. Something that I do want to talk about sticking with, and maybe I'm the minority in this, because it seems like every other Bucks fan that you talk to wants Coach Bud fired. I don't know about you guys. If you are on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, drop a comment on what you think. Do you guys think that Coach Mike Budenholzer saved his job with the series? Do you think that him beating the Brooklyn Nets in 7 games, took literally everything that they could get. Do you think he saved his job? Now, Adrian Wojnarowski was out on record saying that he thinks that he secured his job. I want to give you my thoughts, but I want to hear from you guys as well. So if you're over on the live stream, let me know what you guys think about Coach Mike Budenholzer. Do you think he's safe? Do you think he's not safe? Does he have to win the finals? Does he have to go to the finals? I'm going to be quite honest with you guys, and this may sound like I'm in the minority, and I know I probably am. I think most Bucks fans, if you ask them, and will probably tell you that they do want him gone, based on X, Y, and Z. I don't know about you guys. I'm 31, so I grew up in the darkest of darkest days as a Milwaukee Bucks fan. Like, the 90s weren't great. We had a nice small run in the early 2000s. That didn't last very long. We traded away Ray Allen for an aged Gary Payton. We had horrible jersey colors with the Christmas red and green. We've dealt with a horrible arena in the Bradley Center for 30 years. We possibly had to throw a website together to save our team because they were floating the idea of moving to Seattle. We just became really good within the last 3 years or so. I know Jason Kidd had his run. We drafted Jabari Parker, who destroyed his knee, unfortunately, just never panned out to be the guy that we thought he was going to be. We've banked on bad contracts. We've done everything. We've been through the ringer. And Coach Mike Budenholzer comes around and has won 162 games in 3 seasons. Where, as Bucks fans, do any of us get off to sit there and say, we want this or that, or you're gone? Do we not forget where we were the last few years? Do we not forget where this franchise was back in early 2010s, possibly leaving the city, the state? And now we're talking about, we want this from our coach. Why? No. The guy's won 162 games in 3 years. He's been to his second conference championship in 3 years with a different team. He wins every single year. His first year, we were the number 1 seed. His second year, we were the number 1 seed. This year, we're the number 3 seed in a very competitive Eastern Conference. And we are now in the Eastern Conference Finals with home court advantage against the Atlanta Hawks. So if you guys are on the live feed, if you're over on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, drop your comments. I want your comments. Did Coach Bud save his job? I don't think he should have ever been worried about his job, to be quite honest with you. I don't think there should have ever been a discussion of who you're going to bring in. Who's better than Coach Bud right now? Peter Fagan was on a local radio station out here in Milwaukee today, and he said it straight up. Guys love Coach Bud. He wins. He's great at his job. What's there to necessarily complain about? Giannis was quoted after Game 7. So was Kevin Durant. The adjustments they made changed the outcome of this game. So again, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm too much of a homer and too much of a fan. But I don't think that there's any way, as a Bucks fan that has been through everything, to sit there and say, I don't want this coach because whatever reason. We've been through everything, all of the bad stuff. Why do I think 162 games in 3 seasons, these 23 playoff victories in the last 3 seasons? Last year was shaken up because of COVID-19. Nobody expected a pandemic to break out at the end of the basketball season and just completely shut it down for 3 months and then restart in a bubble. People forget last year the Bucks were on pace to win 70 games and to secure the number 1 seed and probably make another deep playoff run following that 2018-2019 season. They were well on their way. And then the bubble happened and just things started to fall apart. But I do not think that Coach Bud needs to be fired. I do not think he needs to win a title to keep his job. There was one guy who dropped some comments on Twitter, and you can follow me on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. He thinks that the Bucks are going to win a title in spite of Coach Bud. What? I mean, I don't think I've ever even heard of a team ever winning a championship in spite of its head coach. I don't believe his job's in jeopardy. I believe as long as the players are responding, his voice is being heard, and they're winning, that he's going to be in Milwaukee. And I don't think he, quote unquote, needs to save his job. I think that getting to the Eastern Conference, beating the Brooklyn Nets in a 7-game series, he's probably safe. And he should be. I mean, there's a lot of good names out there, a lot of people well-deserving of head coaching opportunities. Becky Hammond down in San Antonio, Chauncey Billups. There's guys that are going to get an opportunity. But who would you take right now that's not currently coaching a team outside of Coach Bud? The only one I can really think of, and he's not even available, is probably Brad Stevens over in Boston, and he just got promoted. Maybe Rick Carlisle. I mean, that's another name that was floated. But the fact that we're talking about coaches and possibly who's going to replace Bud in the middle of a playoff run when they are 8 wins away from a championship, the last thing I'm concerned about is who's going to be the coach for the Milwaukee Bucks from here on, starting next year. It's going to be Coach Bud, and it should be. He's turned this franchise around. Look, Giannis has never played better since he's been under Coach Bud. 2 MVPs in 3 years. 2 MVPs in 3 seasons. 2 Eastern Conference Finals. 2 out of the 3 seasons. One of those being a pandemic season. So you can't necessarily even count that. I mean, I guess if you really, really hate Coach Bud, you can, but you can't even really count that against him. What was he supposed to do? They were on their way to winning the number 1 seed and possibly getting deep in the playoffs. So again, I don't know about you guys. I think Coach Bud is probably safe. Jake, he's over on Facebook. You can follow us on Facebook at Brew City Pod. He says, like the Giannis slander, people just want the Bucks to fail. Who brings up coaching changes in an Eastern Conference Finals? And that's what drives me nuts. Shout out to Jake for checking us out on Facebook. He's a good friend of mine. But why is it even a discussion? Even when the Bucks were in the middle of the second round, why are we even discussing what's going to happen with a guy like Coach Mike Budenholzer? And I'm the kind of guy that doesn't want to call for anybody's job. I don't want to sit here and say that this person should be fired because of this reason, or that person, or this person, whatever. It's not my place. But a guy is making a deep run in the playoffs, and now that the Bucks are winning, and now the national media is gathering up as many excuses as they can, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, to just name a few. Now, and even before that, it was, well, the playoffs from last year ended, and then the season started up too early. LeBron came out with that excuse after he got the boot in the first round. So again, it's just more excuses for people just to give any reason as to why they're talking about a head coach being replaced while he's in the middle of a title run. And that's where the Bucks are right now. Guys, they're 8 wins away. 8 wins away from a title. And we have fans, local media, national media, talking about Mike Budenholzer's job. Give the man a break. He just beat Brooklyn in Game 7. And I didn't want to bring this topic on the podcast because it more so annoys me as a Bucks fan because we've been through the worst of the worst. And this guy comes in here in 3 seasons and he's won 162 games. And we're sitting here talking about what he needs to do to save his job. What? You're not, no, Bucks fans, no, that's not who we are. We haven't earned that yet. Okay, we haven't earned that yet. A decade of being dominant, then we can start talking about what we want and what we don't want. But we're not there yet. We're not. We're just not. So we're going to leave that be to where it needs to be, and I think it needs to be buried. Yeah, Coach Bud is staying here again as long as the players are listening, his voice is being heard, and the locker room is secured. He's not going anywhere. But moving on to that, I do want to talk a little bit about the matchup with the Atlanta Hawks in the Eastern Conference Finals. If you guys are on the live stream, if you're on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, drop me your keys to beating the Atlanta Hawks. I'm going to give you mine. I want to talk a little bit about the series. While I do so, if you guys want to drop in a comment about your keys to beating this Atlanta Hawk team. Again, the 5th seed, the Milwaukee Bucks are the third seed. So, of course, the Milwaukee Bucks will get home court advantage, which I think is huge, considering they were not home court advantage in the second round and traveled more than they probably wanted to. So they will be home in Milwaukee for the first 2 games. During the regular season, I don't put a whole lot of stock into it. Same thing with Brooklyn. The Milwaukee Bucks won 2 out of 3 games. The Milwaukee Bucks beat Atlanta as well, 2 out of 3 games. Now, Trae Young only played in 1 of those games. The Bucks were down. I think they sat pretty much everybody in one of those games. So, again, it's kind of a back and forth, push and give type thing. Now, there are some injuries that I think need to be brought into this series. Now, I think for the most part, the Milwaukee Bucks, outside, of course, Dante DiVincenzo, are out. Now, what a storyline this series could be had he been playing, if he was going to guard Bogdanovic. Because if you guys want to go back to November, as Bucks fans, we thought we had Bogdanovic on our team for about 2 days, and obviously the NBA said no. But speaking of Bogdan, his knee injury, I think, is something of concern, especially for Atlanta, and I believe they are in Milwaukee as we speak. He didn't finish that game 7 against the Sixers. Keep in mind, Atlanta did also go 7 games with the Philadelphia 76ers. So both teams coming off a long series. See how they respond. Both of these teams after a mentally and physically draining series win. Trae Young's dealing with a shoulder injury. I'm not too sure exactly what that shoulder injury is for Trae Young, but you do see him on the bench with the heat wrap and the ice throughout the game. DeAndre Hunter is obviously out for the season. But Bogdanovic, again, like I was saying, he didn't finish that game, and it was a knee injury. And you could kind of watch him while he was playing. His shot was just had no lift on it. You could tell he was dragging that up and down the court. So it's going to be interesting to see in the series the effect that he has. Now, news flash to the Atlanta Hawks fans. This is not the Philadelphia 76ers. Joel Embiid was banged up. Ben Simmons was afraid to play basketball. Danny Green was out. So again, I mean, Philly has a bunch of excuses, and trust me, they're using them. But I don't know if Atlanta is necessarily prepared in the way that the Milwaukee Bucks have played against the Brooklyn Nets. The matchups are going to be something to keep an eye on. Who matches up with who? I think there's a lot of factors that go into this series, and I'm not taking Atlanta lightly. There's some Bucks fans that are Bucks in 4, Bucks in 5. I eventually do think the Bucks will win this series. I don't know how many games. I don't like necessarily predicting how many games. I guess I'll give you my prediction at the end of this segment. But if you guys are on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, let me know what your keys are to beating the Atlanta Hawks. Now, the Atlanta Hawks team, obviously led by Trae Young, who's averaging just under 30 points a game. Clint Capella is their leading rebounder. Trae Young is their assist leader. They're a fast-paced, running gun, younger type of team. They shoot the ball very well, and at any point they got 3 or 4 shooters on the court that can just Gallinari, Bogdanovic that we talked about if he's healthy. Kevin Huerter, he can shoot the ball. Lou Williams coming off the bench, he can light it up and get going. Gallinari, who they acquired in the offseason, can also shoot it. So it's going to be interesting to see where the Bucks match up. I do think you'll see a lot of Giannis on Gallinari. You'll probably see, obviously, you'll see Drew Holiday on Trae Young, which is going to be probably my favorite matchup, I think, in the series. I want to see how a younger, quicker Trae Young matches up with a bigger, more veteran Drew Young. So that matchup to me is going to be interesting. I'm curious to see where Bobby Portis and PJ Tucker are going to fall in this. Does Tucker line up with John Collins? Is PJ Tucker guarding John Collins? So I think Coach Bud has some good options defensively. Obviously, you'll probably see Giannis on Gallinari, which I think is going to benefit Giannis. Gallinari is not going to be able to stick with Giannis. And I don't know if there's a guy on this lineup for Atlanta, and I said it the same series with Brooklyn, that is going to be able to guard Giannis. Clint Capella is going to be on Brook Lopez, and you would imagine that it's going to be Gallinari, but I don't know. I don't think he can stick with Giannis with the speed and the size that Giannis has. So I think he's going to be able to get kind of whatever he wants, and hopefully that aggressive drive to the hole type Giannis shows up. So that's going to be something to watch. Now, both of these teams kind of fared about even in the second round and in the first round of the playoffs. Atlanta averaging 106.3 points per game, and the Milwaukee Bucks at right just under 108 points per game. And defensively, they're kind of almost identical. Atlanta allowing 105 points per game, Milwaukee at 102.3. So again, pretty evenly matched. But here's the thing with this series. Giannis is the best player on the court. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's nobody on the court for Atlanta that is better than Giannis. Now, Trae Young's going to have his moments. He's going to score. He's going to go off. He's going to hit big shots. Being able to sustain him is going to be my number one key. Now, if you guys have keys, something that, the Bucks absolutely have to do, drop a comment, drop your thoughts. I'm seeing a lot of don't let Trae Young go off. And that's kind of the thing though. Trae Young's going to get his. It's kind of like with Kevin Durant. You just can't let somebody else, you can't, like Jeff Green in game 5. You can't let John Collins go off for 25, 30 points. You can't allow Kevin Huerter to go off for 30 points. So my number one key is sustain Trae Young. Okay. Make him earn what he's going to get. He's going to get pretty much, he's able to create for himself. He's going to create a lot. What I mean by sustain him is don't let him go off for 50. Don't let him go off for 45. Make him earn what he's getting. Ben Simmons did a very good job defensively against Trae Young. I think Drew Holiday's a little bit better defender than Ben Simmons. So you can imagine that Drew Holiday probably took a lot from what Ben Simmons was doing and is going to incorporate that in his matchup with Trae Young. Number 2 key for me is rebound the basketball. It goes without saying. Clint Capella is a rebound machine. Control the rebounds. You control the rebounds. You control those second chance, third chance opportunities. And we know what Atlanta does. If you watch Atlanta, they love those offensive boards, kick them out to one of their 500 shooters that they have on the lineup at any time. And that's how they create the momentum. That's how they create a little bit of a run that they go on. So being able to control those rebounds, being able to control the glass, second and third opportunity points are going to be huge. And my third point, and I kind of alluded to it earlier just a minute ago, there's nobody better in this series. There might not be anybody better in the playoffs right now than Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like, he is the man. He is the guy. But the most important thing about Giannis is he has to play like it. Play like you are, and that's my number 3 key. Play like you are the best player on the court. Play like you own everybody, because there's nobody better than you. If Giannis plays as the best player in this series, in these playoffs, the Bucks will roll. They're going to win. But he has to play like it. Don't settle for long-range three-pointers. Don't settle for 17, 18-footers when you can easily get to the rim. And we've seen it against Brooklyn. Get to the hole. You heard Kevin Durant after the game talk to Giannis. Every possession, go get one. Because that's the capability that Giannis has. He is the 2-time MVP. Not Trae Young, not John Collins. Giannis is the 2-time MVP. My dad's over on YouTube. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Brew City Lounge. He says, make sure Giannis takes it to the hole in the paint more than he shoots threes. And that's kind of what I was just talking about. Make them, if you have to get them in foul trouble and you got to get to the line, Giannis, that's perfectly fine. Get to the free throw line. A key to beating the Atlanta Hawks is going to be getting to the hole and driving to the hoop and controlling the offensive rebounds and making sure Trae Young doesn't absolutely go off and have a series of his life. You you get 2 out of 3 of those. I don't see how it's not Bucks in 6. I think it probably goes 6. I think Atlanta might sneak 1 or 2 wins, maybe one in Milwaukee. maybe one in Atlanta. I don't see how it goes over 6. I could also see it Bucks in 5. I do think this is a series that the Milwaukee Bucks change the outlook that the NBA has on this city and on this franchise. I think the Milwaukee Bucks do win this series and go to the NBA Finals. And it feels so good to say that. But it starts at this moment right here. You are the better team, Milwaukee. You have the better players. You have home court advantage. Do not let up. Do not take this team lightly. Do not think that for 1 second, just because you're better, you got the better player, that you can take this team lightly. Control Trae Young, okay? Control the offensive boards, the defensive boards. Do not, limit those second and third chance opportunities. And more importantly, probably the most important, Giannis, play like the man. Play like the man. You are the man. Play like it. Own it. Dominate. Go get one every single possession, just like KD told you. Make it happen. And I think this Bucks team is going to go and win and get to the NBA Finals. And we'll talk about that when it happens. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I think any one of these 4 teams that are left could win an NBA championship this year. It's just that much fun. And there's a lot of people that are national media, mostly, that are out there talking about, how it sucks that, it's not one of these big teams, but this is what makes it great. This is what makes the NFL great. If people forget that last year's the AFC and NFC championship games consisted of 4 small NFL media market teams: Tampa Bay, Green Bay's the smallest, Buffalo, and Kansas City. And the NFL does just fine. So the NBA can do just fine as well. Learn to promote a little bit more of these cities, and you probably don't have the problem you have. But we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be fun. Like Xavier shouted out on Facebook, and shout out to everybody that tuned into the live feed. The Deer District is probably going to be probably be a little bit more crazy than it was in 2018, 2019 against the Toronto Raptors. I don't know if there's been more of a belief in this team than there is this year. I think beating Brooklyn just brought, if you were kind of unsure about this team, if you were kind of doubting them and, a little bit too pessimistic, I think beating Brooklyn has brought it out, and they're preparing a third large screen monitor for the game. They're preparing for 10,000 more fans down at the Deer District. I think there's probably a belief that this is the year. And if it's not the year, then it may never happen. But it's just a great time to be a Milwaukee Bucks fan. Look, Friday's going to be, and we're going to have a show. I don't even know if we're going to have a show on Friday. Friday's going to be insane. Friday in Milwaukee is going to be like a national holiday, a local holiday. The Milwaukee Brewers are back to 100%. They're having their reopening day party Friday. They have first pitch at 3:10, and then at 7:30 the Milwaukee Bucks tip off. So between like American Family Field and the Deer District and Fifer Forum, like 94 is probably going to be completely shut down. Like the city's probably going to be shut down. It's a really good time to, number one, have a podcast during this time. I'll be quite honest with you. Plenty to talk about, plenty of good stuff to talk about. And more importantly, it's good to be a fan of these teams at this moment because both of them are doing good. The Brewers, and I know the last 2 shows, I haven't done a whole lot of Brewers coverage. We'll get to the Brewers, especially when the Bucks season does run out. The Brewers are in first place, tied with the Cubs right now, and they lose a game last night against the Arizona Diamondbacks that haven't lost a game in like a month. But of course, the Brewers lose to them. So, look, I just wanted this last few shows to kind of be about the Milwaukee Bucks because I think they deserve it. Look, beating Brooklyn in 7, having home court advantage in the Eastern Conference Finals doesn't happen very often. As a Bucks fan, it literally happens like twice every 20 years. So when it comes, we have to enjoy it. And I'm definitely going to enjoy it. Game 1 tomorrow, 7:30. After that game, follow the Brew City Lounge podcast. We will be doing a post-game show immediately following that game and get your guys' thoughts. And look, if you know somebody or maybe you want to jump on, just shoot me a message over on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. You can follow me on Facebook, and I'll get you on and we can talk about the Milwaukee Bucks game following that game 1 and so on and so forth. So That'll do it for today's show, ladies and gentlemen. I was supposed to have Steve Sparky Fifer, so if you're following the show and you were kind of waiting for him, I do apologize. We had a schedule conflict that happened late prior to the show, and I did not want to cancel the show in its entirety, so I just kind of went on and just decided to drive on with it. So if you were tuning in to listen to Steve and not me, number one, you hurt my feelings, and number two, I do apologize. So we'll get him back on when his schedule does open up a little bit. But that'll do it for today's show. A lot of Bucks talk. Bucks beat Brooklyn in 7. Bucks face the Atlanta Hawks. 8 games away, guys. 8 games away from a championship parade. I've been telling you for the longest time since I started this podcast what needs to happen to have a parade in downtown Milwaukee. And ladies and gentlemen, we are close. We are getting there. See what happens in this series against the Atlanta Hawks. Again, that'll do it for the show. Please do not forget to subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. We are available on all major platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, just to name a few. Also, don't forget to follow the show on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, at Brew City Pod. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube at Brew City Lounge. And, of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. The Brewers play tonight, 8:40 first pitch against the Arizona Diamondbacks. So go Brewers. And as always, go Bucks, baby. I will see you guys on Wednesday following the Bucks game. Have a great day, and I will talk to you later.